I'm back at the children.
Yes?
And you said the parent need to deal with it for the children. But I think the children can save the parent.
No. I'm sorry, I can't agree.
Okay.
A child who has an undeveloped sense of its own will cannot save somebody who has a developed sense of their own will. So the reality is the child can trigger emotions in the parents that can certainly assist the parents. And in fact, the whole reason why that particular child has been attracted to those parents is to do such a thing, is to actually help the parent work through their unloving emotions. But the reality is the child can't, as a choice, help the parent. And the parent can't rely on that either, because the reality is the parent is the one with all the control. The parent's the one with all of the power. And so it's very, very hard for a person with no power to assist a person with power without there being some collective action.
Because maybe you are in lower age than I thought of.
Oh, you were thinking like a teenager or something,
yes.
Were you? Right, fire away with your teenager explanation for me.
Sorry?
Tell me about your teenager explanation.
No, it's not like that, but I myself, instead of my parents, is going to deal with things that I blame them for.
Yeah.
I felt that I worked with myself and they were relieved. Do you understand?
I understand what you're saying, but...
So if you have impossible parents and you want to help a child...
Let's look at what's really happening.
Can you do something if I change my question?
Well, let's look at what's really happening with our parents, Carol, for a start. So here's you, and here's your parents, right? Now, obviously, if you have specific emotions, for example, you have anger with your parents, and underneath the anger with your parent is some fear that you have about what they did with you or whatever, and then underneath that there was some grieving to do that you needed to let go of. Obviously, when you get out of your anger into your fear, then your parents are no longer receiving your anger. I agree. And if that's the case, then those parents are no longer feeling your anger. And that's certainly going to be a relief for them. However, all of your grief, most probably, for most people, came from your parents. And the fact is, even when you were angry, these parents should have been more willing to address their emotions of why you were angry with them. They should have been, but they weren't. So while you go through this process, which is a great process to go through, right, it does not mean that your parents' actual condition that caused your grief is ever going to be addressed. Right? The reality is they're just relieved that they're no longer getting your anger anymore. But they have not yet addressed why they did it. They have not yet addressed why they created your grief. That's the thing God's trying to get them to address. So they are going to continue to attract events. And your anger is not one of those events, by the way. But they're going to continue to attract events that display to them their own condition as to why they harmed their own children. They will attract those events. So while you can address these issues yourself, and there will be a degree of relief in your parents when you address these issues, which is great because you're no longer projecting at them those particular emotions that you had that you no longer have. The problem is they themselves still may never address their particular unhealthy and unloving causal behaviour, the reason why they damaged you in the first place. And they need to make that choice, whatever you do, and you cannot relieve them of that. There's nothing you can do that will actually relieve them of that, except telling them the truth and loving them. Nothing else can be done.
And then the children don't have it anymore.
You don't have it yet. Once you release the gear that your parents gave you, you no longer have it anymore, so your law of attraction changes. But they still have it. And until they go through the process of releasing their soul condition, they will still attract the same events.
Yes, because I want to know how to help small children that has impossible parents.
From a society perspective, the only way to help a small child that has impossible parents is to relieve the child of its parents.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the only really possible way, because the child is under the control of those parents, and unless the parents are loving, there is no real way to relieve the child of their unloving behaviour, unless the parents are willing to change. So the reality is, you see, these are part of our society beliefs about families. We all believe that families should stick together no matter what. Can't agree. Families should never stick together when the family is being unloving to each other. They should all go their separate ways or learn about love. They need to do one of those two things rather than stick together. Because the reality is, while they're sticking together and being unloving with each other, they are just causing more damage to each other. That's not loving. We need to stop doing that. Does that make sense? So you've got to be careful about our family definitions. You see, if we truly love, we'll view everyone on earth as my family, and therefore I will not have any sense of inequality with dealing with you. I will deal with you the exact same way that I deal with my son that was born to me. I won't have any difference in the way I treat the both of you. If I actually view you as my sister as much as I view him as my brother. And my son is my brother, because he's not my son, he's God's son. And that makes me and him brothers. Yeah.